Hello, I'm Grayson Ponti. I'm the Executive Director of ZANE, Zoos and Aquariums. We're a neurodiverse ecosystem.
And I'm Kari Hart. I'm the Director of Professional Development and Education for AZA.
Hello, I'm John Rossi. I'm a touring drummer with a passion for animal conservation. When I'm on the road, I spend as much time as possible visiting zoos, aquariums, and conservation organizations. Now, I want to share those places with you. I'll be talking to keepers, vets, conservationists, anyone who can help me in my mission of connecting my people to animals through their people. Join me on my Rossifari. Hi, hello, how are you? Welcome back to the Rossifari podcast. All right, y'all, it is April, and April is, something that we normally talk about being a month celebrating apes, and we do all of our animal holidays, but it turns out that it's actually also World Autism Month and Autism Acceptance Month. And in light of that, we're going to be doing a pretty special episode today. So as you heard in the intro, we've got Grayson Ponti from ZANE and all kinds of other cool organizations. And we've got Kari Hart from the AZA. And we're going to talk about accessibility within the AZA. We talk a lot about neurodivergence and what that looks like and what the AZA and zoos and these other organizations are doing for employees who are neurodivergent. We talk about what they're doing for guests that are neurodivergent. We talk about all kinds of stuff. I even talk about recently being diagnosed with some neurodivergence of my own. So it's definitely a really deep, really good conversation, and one that I'm really excited to be having and to be sharing during World Autism Month, Autism Acceptance Month, all of the cool months that this is. So before we get to that, a quick reminder to make sure that you're following along. Don't miss any episodes. Follow on the socials at Rossifari, on TikTok at Rossifari Pod. And that you can support the pod for as little as $3 a month by going to patreon.com/Rossifari. Now, with all of that said, let's get to our interview. Here's my interview with Grayson Ponti and Kari Hart about accessibility in the AZA. Enjoy, y'all.
I've been an advisor on mosaics for the last 5 years, and I'm now a co-principal investigator on Beyond Access.
And I'm Kari Hart. I'm the Director of Professional Development and Education for AZA and have been involved with mosaics for almost the full grant process, and I'm also a co-PI on Beyond Access.
Excellent. Very cool. Well, welcome. I'm really glad to have y'all here. And so we are here to talk about access and all of the things. And I will start off by saying that I'm not super aware of what we're going to talk about. I'm going to let y'all lead a lot of the conversation. I don't really have a ton of knowledge about the work that's being done, but I'm really excited to learn and then also to have my listeners learn. So let's start off by defining a couple of these things. So we've got ZANE, Mosaic, the third one I think you said?
Beyond Access.
Beyond Access, perfect. Cool. So what are those?
Where do we want to start?
Let's start Mosaic, since that was the first one.
Sure. Yeah. So Mosaics is an NSF-funded grant that was a collaboration between AZA, the Association of Zoos and Aquariums, Oregon State University, and Vanderbilt University's Triad Center, who are experts on inclusion and accessibility. And so the Mosaic stands for Modeling Zoos and Aquariums as Inclusive Communities of Science for Autistic Individuals. Took a little bit of liberties with making the mosaics work.
No judgment here.
But it's a nice, easy phrasing for it. And so this work was kind of stemmed out of AZA's fifth promise of diversity, access, and inclusion, looking to specifically look at inclusion for autistic individuals, not just in the visitor experience, although also that, but also as staff and volunteers and people that work in all aspects of the zoo and aquarium community. Do you want to add anything on that, Grayson?
Yes. So Mosaics was really the foundational research in this area, figuring out where zoos and aquariums are in fostering belonging for individuals with ASD. And it was, like Kari was saying, at first this kind of collaboration between the zoo world, the therapy world, and academia to try to get this research. And so what we did with Mosaics is we got some great findings to be able to inform how we can best create a community of practice in regards to creating neurodiversity affirming practices. And what we're doing with Beyond Access is that we're expanding and amplifying it. Beyond Access is now not just zoos and aquariums in Oregon State University, but it's also science centers, children's museums, and botanic gardens. We have American Public Gardens Association, the Association of Science and Technology Centers, and the Association of Children's Museums all involved. And to my knowledge, these industries have not worked together in the same way. And we're trying to take what we've learned in Mosaics and spread it to other informal science organizations, as well as really amp up how are we going to actually create an inclusive community across these sectors. And we, like I said, we've got lots of great research from Mosaics, but we're really trying to figure out how can we get people to use it. We're trying to get people to understand inclusion isn't achieved, it is practice. And we're going to have to really drill it into everything we do in a very thoughtful way. So Beyond Access is going to, over the next 4 years, help zoos and aquariums, as well as other informal science organizations, take their next step on this journey. Oh, I should also mention that while Mosaics focus primarily on ASD, we are including all types of neurodivergence and Beyond Access.
Which is also an NSF-funded grant program, but a much newer one. We received funding in October?
Yes, so very new.
Nice. So let's talk about ZANE quick, like an overview, and then we can go from there.
So ZANE stands for Zoos and Aquariums for a Neurodiverse Ecosystem, and I founded it in October 2024 as a self-advocate who's neurodivergent. I saw that we've done a lot in our field to try to make our visits more accessible, but I felt like the next piece is really tapping into the employment side, because 1 out of 5 people are neurodivergent in some way, and it's about double that in animal-based fields. And I found that if you're neurodivergent, you're in a system that's not designed to work for you. And we thought, how can we change the zoo world to really, because neurodivergent people have a lot of unique skills and talents that can really elevate this profession. This is not just a nice thing to do. This is something that benefits us. So we thought, how can we both create a community of self-advocates and allies that can support each other, as well as coach institutions on how to create neurodivergent affirming practices. And I had seen what MIAS and AMZAP had done, the Minorities in Aquarium and Zoo Science and Association of Minority Zoo and Aquarium Professionals had done. I thought, why can't we do something similar for neurodiversity? Those organizations primarily focus on empowering individuals, which we do want to do, but I really wanted to help break down the systemic barriers to inclusion. So that's been a big priority for us. And I would say what we do is threefold. We spark the conversation to foster inclusivity and belonging. We empower through community, and we provide guidance and growth to help people know what they don't know and move the zoo and aquarium world from compliance to compassion for everyone.
Awesome. Very cool. Now, you should probably define what neurodivergent means in the way that we're talking about it here. So go ahead.
So neurodiversity is both the biological fact and the social movement that no two brains are alike, and that's totally natural for different people to think different ways. It's a change from the deficit model, which very much used neurological differences in terms of disability. Neurodiversity is like everyone's brains work differently, and that is normal, and that is something that should be celebrated. So neurodivergent is individuals whose brain and behavior patterns are a little bit more outside of what's typical. The term neurodivergent is oftentimes used interchangeably with disorders on the autism spectrum, but it's really a lot more, like ADHD, OCD, dyspraxia, to name a few.
Interesting. So I'm always an open book on my podcast. And about a month ago, I was diagnosed with OCD, and it explains almost everything that has happened in my entire life, good and bad. Like, it was one of those things where when the doctor said it, I was like, oh, duh. You know what I mean? Like, it was incredible. And it's funny because I've never thought of myself as a neurodivergent individual. And now not only do I know that I am, but wow, what an eye-opener, you know?
Yeah,
it's interesting.
A lot of people I know actually didn't realize they were neurodivergent until their kids got diagnosed. And then they were like, wait a minute.
That makes sense. No, that makes a lot of, it was really funny. My doctor, I won't go into a ton of detail, but I was describing something to my doctor, and I was like, yeah, and I just figured, you know, that's like being a kid. And she's like, John, that is not being a kid. And I was like, oh, and she's like, it's fine, but, and it was a really funny moment to me. And looking back at, like I said, literally everything in my life has how it has shaped that, including, you know, good things, launching Rossifari, being obsessive enough. And I mean, I can literally use that word to do 2 episodes a week and to never miss an episode and to like have made it a thing. It has been a blessing and a curse, but it's something that I'm just now coming to terms with, viewing myself through that lens, you know, and understanding that, that I am neurodivergent, and that's cool. So I'm actually, this is a really timely interview.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's something that we particularly have tried to do with, I mean, we started a conversation with Mosaics, but really with both ZANE and Beyond Access dig into is that a lot of people view neurodivergence in terms of children, while really there are people with families and careers, including in our profession, who have these neurological differences. And one thing that's hard about being neurodivergent is people don't always know how to interpret it, you know. The barriers for it are very subtle because a lot of people don't understand or even aware of neurodivergence. So we're trying to get people to consider it and to try to get through any internal biases or misconceptions they have.
And also looking at making systems that make it easier for everybody, regardless of their neuroidentity, to access the resources that they need that make it easier for them to do their job really well. So that can look like we have organizations that offer kind of accommodation menus to employees or to people coming through the hiring process. And that's a way of saying, here's all of the accommodations that we can offer, as opposed to waiting on somebody to ask for specific accommodations when you may not know what's possible. So looking at ways to kind of build out some of those systems.
Yes, we're trying to make systems more flexible rather than having quote unquote neurotypical systems where it's like you either fit in or you don't. We want to make things that everyone can, rather than try to create special things for special people, we're trying to create great things that are great for everyone, no matter their neuroidentity.
Very cool. That makes a lot of sense to me, and I think that's a wonderful. I also love that you know, this was inspired by other great organizations. I just think that that's so cool. I find it fascinating that you said that in the field it's about double the general population.
Yes.
Because I was going to ask you that, because the sheer number of people that I have met in this world that are, very much say I am neurodivergent in some way is astonishing. I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't have been surprised to find out it was more than double. But
yes.
Yeah.
I mean, every conference I go to, more people have told me I've just been diagnosed or I just realized it. I also think it's important to say that somebody can identify as being neurodivergent if they don't have a diagnosis, because there are so many cultural and financial barriers to having a diagnosis. That doesn't mean that that everyone is neurodivergent. Like everyone, like some people will say things like touching autism or I'm so OCD. That's not good. But if people, I feel like, if you recognize this in yourself,
absolutely,
that has a lot of merit.
The ability to, especially in the United States, get to a doctor, get testing, talk to people, even get medicine, whatever, is challenging. And we're not going to make this a political podcast, but the politics of it in the country in general is a challenge. It absolutely is. And I honestly think one of the reasons I was not diagnosed for so long was that I didn't have great insurance. So I didn't actually have a doctor who got to know me and listen to me.
Yes. Or like if you're working as a keeper, oftentimes it's so hard to find an appointment that takes your insurance and is not on your schedule. There also are a lot of misconceptions, even in the therapy world, about neurodivergence. Like, I can't tell you how many times me and others have been told, you make eye contact, you can't be autistic.
Great. I'm sure that's super helpful to hear that.
Yeah. But we're really seeing a big change in terms of how much people see and understand this.
Good.
I remember the first time I spoke about neurodiversity, I was the only person on a diversity panel who represented that perspective. Now you'll see multiple conference sessions about it. And
I think we've seen an increased comfort with people being open about their neuroidentities and exploring that, which I think speaks to the community becoming more of a welcoming and accessible space. I think there's still a lot of work to do. Yeah. You don't achieve accessibility. It is a journey that is ongoing, but I think that we've seen more and more people being comfortable. And I think that folks like Grayson that are self-advocates make it feel more acceptable and accepted.
Yes, I feel like our field has always wanted to do the right thing. I think people who work in the zoo are naturally caring and altruistic. I think it's just the more mindfulness and awareness of it.
Yeah, it's tricky to know what you don't know, right? And then once you know, you want to do better. And no, that makes a lot of sense. So I'm really curious. I know that you're doing all of this stuff now, Grayson, but what got you here? What was your journey into the zoo world like?
So I've always loved zoos. I grew up in Orlando, Florida. So since everyone goes on vacation to Orlando, we went to normal cities where normal people live. And part of that was always going to the zoo. And I got to see how different zoos were different, how they had very different exhibits and animals and told very different stories. And like I said, I was always drawn to nature, but I thought that you had to be a scientist to work in a zoo, and I was not as strong in the sciences as I was in the humanities. And I'm like, wait a minute, there are all of these different professions in zoos. So I thought like I wanted to work more with the people side of zoos, and then I started writing about zoos, interviewing people, going to conferences, and I got in for the education way. I started as a part-time employee and went all the way up to management at 3 different facilities.
Okay.
But I also saw, just as I was starting was when the conversation on mosaics was starting. And I'm like, wait a minute, I should help destigmatize this and share my story. And I've never looked back.
That's awesome. And I mean, you are like the stuff of legend. I remember the first AZA conference that I went to, and Katie Prop was like, "This is Grayson. Grayson's awesome.
have to meet Grayson."
And I was like, "Okay." And,
Katie's
like,
a dear friend.
yes, no, I know. And we said hi, but like every time I've ever seen you at a conference, I mean, I had to have Sarah from the AZA book you to my podcast because it's too hard to even go and talk to you. You have people around you the whole time. People love you.
Messaged me or emailed me, and
No, I know. But it is just amazing to see. And I've now started doing this too, and it's kind of fun. You see this little group around, and you're like, who's in the center of that? And often the answer was, it was Grayson.
well, I think one thing that can be hard from inclusion standpoint in the zoo world is that it is, well, 2,000 something people sounds like a lot. When it's the same people, it's not. And I feel like, a lot of this is such a big part of our lives. We share the same passions, experiences. So it's very easy for us to seem cliquey and all that because we're so close and, we are with people that get in a unique way, but we always love new people. And I mean, my very first conference, I had zoo directors who I quickly befriended. So I feel like, it's important for people to know that this is a safe space.
Absolutely. It really
and all
is.
that. And we've started giving out the ZANE pens partially so people can know, like, this person, well, even if you don't have to share all your story or the whys behind it. This person cares about these things as someone who can identify with.
That's very, very cool. Kari, what is your story?
Yeah, so I ended up coming onto Mosaics. It was about a year in on the project. So I wasn't here for the beginning of that work. So got kind of jump-started into all of this, which has been really interesting. My passion is really working with people on crafting their career path and where they want to go and where they want to be, which is really fun in the zoo and aquarium space because we have so many options and also so many challenges and barriers that we encounter with movement. And before I came into working at AZA, I was working in zoos and aquariums and mostly in the education department, also some with ambassador animals. And so got to see different people's struggles and journeys and people falling in and out of love with this field, which is a really interesting process. And so Mosaics and the other work that I do in my current role just provides this great opportunity to help support people as they go along that path of figuring out how to make the zoo and aquarium space the best it can be for themselves and for others. And I agree with Grayson. We just have such great people that want to do great things. And I think a lot of what we're seeing in inclusion spaces is that, one, we want to do everything all at once, which can be really challenging. And there's lots of different aspects of inclusion. And so part of what we wanted to do with this work was really focusing on one aspect because we can't solve all of the things at the same time. And we're not going to find solutions to everything all at once. And it's just this great opportunity for people to come together on a space that we know already exists within our community and build up supports and opportunities for folks. So it's been a really fun journey for me. I've learned a lot about neurodiversity and the language around neurodiversity and neurodivergence. And I constantly am getting new terminology from Grayson. What was the new word that you taught us?
Neurocomplexity.
Neurocomplexity.
Which is coined by a term Lindsay Makareff, and it really acknowledges that because it's not uncommon for people to have multiple neuroidentities, or even for people with the same diagnosis to have it in different ways. So neurocomplexity is like, rather than being like this person has ASD or ADHD, they have these symptoms, being like this person has XYZ, like different flavors mixed together. Because like for me, it's hard to say what parts of me are ASD, ADHD, anxiety, sensory processing, or just who I am as a person. So neurocomplexity really takes into account the nuance of all that.
That's really fascinating to me, and I like that a lot. One of the things that I genuinely struggled with when I was diagnosed was I was given medication to help with my situation, and a part of me literally thought, I was talking to my wife, and I said, babe, both of my jobs, professional musician and the Rossifari stuff, are based entirely on being passionate.
Yes.
What if my passion is an obsession, and what if I get on this medication and I just stop? And it scared me. And I've never in my life been a person who's like afraid of medication. You know, if something's wrong, I'm going to do the thing. And it took like 3 or 4 days to start taking medication just because I was scared, you know? And so it's interesting to think about that, because what is me being obsessive in a literal sense, and what is me being passionate, you know? And fortunately I found out that I'm pretty darn passionate.
But
it scared me.
I do find medication can be good in helping, mitigate some of the less good sides of neurocomplexity. I think another thing too is because you can't see inside someone's brain, see it's different. So I think out this for yourself, you don't know if you're neurodivergent. You don't always know it's different. Like for instance, with some of my friends who are neurodivergent in the zoo field, we were like, it took us 20 plus years to realize that not everyone has 20 tabs open in their brain at the same time.
That's so real.
Well, and passion is like the beating heart of the zoo field, right? You never meet somebody working in a zoo or aquarium that part of their story isn't, I just love what I do.
Right.
So yeah, I can see that being a fear.
It really was. It was a real struggle for me. And I've been a pretty lucky dude. I haven't had a lot of like big struggles like that in my life, but it did scare me a lot. On a side note, you and I need to talk because I'm trying to figure out what I want to be when I grow up. But
let's talk.
That's neither here nor there. But yeah.
I love talking to people about what they want to be when they grow up.
Excellent.
And it's never too late to ask that question.
Yes, I also feel like we grow up multiple times in our life,
yes,
which we are not told growing up.
No, I have learned that in the last couple of years, and it has been astonishing and scary and all the things. So I very much agree with that. So we've talked a lot about the steps that have been taken for inclusion and for accessibility so far, but we haven't talked about what those are. So tell me some of the advances, the successes that have happened in the last couple of years.
So it's a variety of different things. A lot of it is also rethinking how we do processes and being like, is this unintentionally hurting anybody? Like an example is things like the clarity in language we use. Like there's so many job descriptions that say excellent communication skills. If you're, you don't know is that verbal or written communication, because if you're dyslexic, you might not want to do written communication, but might be very strong in verbal communication. While if you have anxiety about talking to people, it's the opposite. So things like that. Also trying to, one of the things with ZANE that we found is that people want the secret formula. They want to know how to do X, Y, and Z, like a toolkit. But really, every neurodivergent individual is different. So what we can best do is help give people the awareness, understanding, and attitude that's going to help them be inclusion. A lot of it is also asking, like, what's most effective to you? How can we help you? I think it's also being more flexible and like, if you can get a job done, it doesn't matter how you do it. Like if you work best with headphones, work with headphones. If you work best in quiet, work in quiet. And being more open-minded about how people can get to this rather than being like you have to conform to this way of doing things.
Yeah, I think we really wanted to focus in on data-informed practices, which is there's not always a ton of data. And so some of that has been looking for what data is out there, seeing what's already been done in other similar fields or sometimes unrelated fields. But yeah, also just trying new things and being flexible. And I think that offering of options, providing flexibility, allowing people to work in the ways that work best for them and making sure that people know that. And one of the other things that we've seen that I've really enjoyed seeing emerge in some of our zoos and aquariums is we have some folks that have inclusion experts on staff. So a staff member whose job is to support making the work inclusive. I know Mystic Aquarium has somebody that's working in that space. I think Woodland Park Zoo does as well. There are some really great folks who this is what they focus on in their job. And I think that having that expertise and an organization putting the effort into having an employee that's dedicated to that, I think makes a big difference for the team just in knowing that person is there, even if they're not using that resource.
Yeah, that's very cool. That's actually very cool.
Right?
Yeah, I like that.
It was not something I would have thought of, but as we were talking to different folks, it was something that came up. And I thought, what an interesting concept and what an obvious good thing to do that it just isn't always on the top of our minds because it isn't the structure that we've always had. Zoos and aquariums tend to be places that are not new. There are some newly built zoos and aquariums, but a lot of them have been around for a really long time. And so while we tend to be flexible and innovative people as a whole, super passionate, really inspired, we also sometimes get caught up in our own rules and rigidity in a way, which I think that looking at this broadly has hopefully encouraged people to think more outside the box on how we can approach our jobs.
Yes. And oftentimes some of the designs of our institutions can be barriers to being accessible. For instance, at one institution I worked in, you had to go in a tunnel under a busy street to get to half the zoo. And it's like we struggled with, like, how do you make that a sensory inclusive place? Because some people are sensory avoidant, some people are sensory seeking. So just trying to make everyone's needs account. And one thing we're really trying to do is saying, like, what can we do to best mitigate and make people so that whatever neuroidentity or how people are wired, they can engage in something just as satisfactory.
Very cool. Did you have whatever comment you were just handed? Or?
Yeah, we were briefly chatting via comment over how a lot of our AZA accredited zoos and aquariums are working on events that are welcoming to all, which is sort of in line with what Grayson was explaining there. Is that sometimes it's difficult because sometimes you have competing needs from different folks, and there are also opportunities where zoos and aquariums are providing events that might be a lower sensory experience for people who are looking for that specific experience. But the real goal is to try and make as much of it as possible inclusive to everybody that might be coming, which is the whole population when it comes to zoos and aquariums.
Right.
We have all sorts of people coming to our organizations, both as employees and visitors.
Yes, really the strategies we're using for neurodivergent people are great for everyone.
That makes sense because everyone's an individual, whether it's an individual, neurodivergent or an individual just being an individual. And it's so funny in a way, like you said, sometimes being an older industry, things, advance and don't.
Yeah.
But that's been a big movement in training in the last decade or so, that training is the study of one. And it used to be, you train an elephant this way, you train a red panda that way. And a lot of the best minds in training now are like, well, let's talk about this individual and let's try to not label them, but just see that, that's another part of it is very similar to what you're talking about. You can label to a point, but if you don't label the animal and just take the information that they give you and see what their reaction to things are and then make life better for them, you will have better results with training. And people are animals, therefore it makes sense, right?
Yes. Someone at this conference said everyone who works at a zoo is a primate keeper, which is very telling.
That's a good.
I like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
So, let's talk about the flip of this for a second, though. The other side of it, which is we've talked mostly about staff and all of that, but there are a lot of steps being taken right now, like you mentioned, at different facilities to make them more accessible to members of the general public. And I think anyone who is listening to this podcast has absolutely seen the sign of headphones. And maybe even don't know what it means. But like I was just at Smithsonian's National Zoo and right in the middle of the panda park, there was a headphone sign and all that. And I know there are kits that are available at certain facilities. So can we talk about some of those things?
So a variety of zoos have gotten sensory certifications to try to create accessibility. Like this might include quiet zones, fidget spinners, headphones, things like that.
Wait, pause. So they literally have fidget spinners?
And you can get in your bag.
In that kit.
Seriously?
Yeah.
I've never gotten a kit. That's actually really cool.
Next time you go, you're going to get a kit.
I am. I'm intrigued. Well, so I do a lot of my work in the theater world, and I have had the habit of during tech. So I work with musicians, and during tech, it's very long process. You might start a song 8 times, 10 times, 12 times, and only get it 5 seconds in. And so people mess with their instruments, and you can't have a guitarist when a lighting person is trying to figure something out. You can't have a guitarist going right. So I started getting everyone fidget spinners for some of my shows, and it's amazing. And there is silence the entire time. Because, again, you want to talk about another industry that has a high amount of neurodivergence. Yeah, acting and music is all of that.
I actually think the theater industry and the zoo and aquarium industry have a lot of interesting overlaps and similarities.
So making a living in both now?
Yeah.
Yes, 1,000%. And it is the biggest shock to me of anything that I have learned doing this podcast, how often I can have conversations with people and I'm talking about the stage versus the habitat, but otherwise it's the exact exact
The same thing.
Down to the passion, down to the, let's face it, underpaid for the amount of work that we all do, down to the
Absolutely.
incredible level of expertise that you need to have, all of it. It's astonishing to me how much overlap there is.
Yes.
Yeah.
I certainly love theater. I mean, I can't sing or act, but I do love.
That's okay. I can't really either, but I still get to do it somehow. But no, but okay. So I didn't mean to interrupt. I just got so excited about the fidget spinners. Yeah, because again, but so the kits have headphones, their quiet zones available, fidget spinners. What other kind of stuff is out there, and how is it made so that people can get this easily?
So there's variation in different institutions about how much they promote it. But quite a few institutions have certainly made sure people know, like, you can get this at the entry or even on the website ahead of time. Another thing we forgot to mention is we just finished facilitating a capstone on mosaics and helping people learn these neurodiversity affirming practices. Engage them, and that was really great, getting people to be creative about how can we apply this to our institution.
Yeah, the sensory space is one area that the zoo and aquarium industry has embraced really quickly, and we've seen it grow. We've seen it happen in a lot of our zoos and aquariums, so we definitely see those sensory kits. They're usually fairly easy to access, signage around facilities, and we want to make sure that that's not an end point for our journey in being more inclusive. It's definitely helping. It's providing resources to folks and making it easier for them to navigate. But headphones can also be a barrier in a way. If a space requires somebody to put on headphones, it might also take away part of the experience. It might mean that they don't have as much opportunity to engage verbally with docents that are in that space, or their family members as they're walking through. And so we want to think about, are there ways to make those spaces? And there aren't always, right? Sometimes loud noises are just loud noises. The birds are noisy some of the time, and we can't control that.
Gibbons.
Right? Right? And we also want to think about, are there ways to make sure that while we are supporting those sensory differences, that we're also making sure that those people are allowed to socially engage in the same way as everybody else. So it's been one really interesting aspect, and we've seen a lot of growth and movement there. And so we haven't focused too much on that with mosaics.
Yes, we've been focusing more on the employment side because we figure out that's the one part that people are less familiar with. Sure. I think the sensory stuff has started the conversation, but I think the next stage is really getting into the employment side and our teams, whether paid employees or volunteers. Something we also are trying to make a bridge from is neurodiversity friendly to neurodiversity affirming. Okay. Neurodiversity friendly is like, we'll make modifications to help welcome you, we'll accept you, but really neurodiversity affirming is like, neurodivergent people are brilliant, and we are going to
want you here.
Right.
To and partner with them to advance our profession, because I feel like neurodivergent individuals oftentimes have a lot of great skills that are uniquely suited to helping the conservation and issues that we're all going through as zoos and aquariums.
That makes a lot of sense. That's really cool. That's a great next step. Now, I'm curious. And again, I know that this is a field that is more compassionate than most, but I'm curious, have y'all hit any backlash? Have there been a lot of experiences with people maybe using inappropriate words or judging people that y'all encounter regularly? Or?
I'd be lying if I said I haven't faced that. I mean, it's not the majority, but I feel, it's an two worlds interesting. Like Kari was saying, we have a lot of deeply rooted traditions and cultural aspects that are there. I would say one of the biggest barriers to inclusion is sometimes people will play the safety card as a reason not to be embrace neurodiversity, like, well, what if they forget a lock or something like that? And I think it's important for people to realize that's oftentimes based in fear mongering and not the actual truth.
Interesting.
And anybody can forget a lock.
Oh, yeah.
As we know.
I've had many keepers on here who are like, and then I forgot a lock, and then ick. I felt really bad.
And there are also some people who are neurodivergent who might be less likely.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
I am not a keeper, but again, with that OCD thing, I have the feeling that I would very much never forget.
Yeah, I think the thing about neurodivergent people is that we oftentimes process things in the opposite way that most people do. Like a lot of neurotypical people have what's called top-down processing, where they're like, these are the thoughts, expectations, and then going from and running with it automatically. Neurodivergent people oftentimes start from the bottom up, and they really have to feel things out and sense them before being able to put words or thoughts to it. And I think because of this, they oftentimes catch things other people don't. They have to take time to really study and figure things out. They see patterns. They get very intense about these things. So I think that,
I mean, all that is exactly what you want, right? Like, that sounds like it's great for the industry.
Yes. I would say the biggest barrier, the other biggest barrier is getting, because, we've got so many animal issues that people are worried about, seeing how this is relevant and part of the conversation, and how creating belonging for neurodivergent people is helping conservation, because it's helping people be able to do the work better and focus on that rather than deal with any barriers that there's stigmas that come up against them.
Yeah, and I would say that as a whole, the community is passionately for this type of work, that we are a community that cares about inclusion, both neurodiversity inclusion and all of the different aspects of inclusion. And the most backlash that I hear from my position is, well, can we do this for all of these other parts of diversity? And the answer is yes, we should continue to constantly be doing more, because what we want is all of those perspectives, right? Yeah. People who think differently, people who look at things differently, because that's how we get to our best outcomes and our best opportunities. So I think the biggest thing that we're hearing is we want more of this. Now, that's not to say that there aren't individual cases where there are people who are not as enthusiastic about moving this work forward. And there are people who are sometimes barriers for their teams or their organizations. And sometimes it's a matter of people who are just not into it. But we also hear from people who are saying things like, I want to do it, but I'm terrified that if I do something and it's wrong, that people will be mad, that it'll cause a problem. And so we're trying to help people understand that that's not going to be the case, right? If you're trying to do something and you're going in with good intentions and you're working with community partners who can help you know the strategies and the way to approach things, then even if it's not perfect, people will respect and appreciate the work that you're doing. But that important piece is working with your community and working with autistic individuals. If you're working to include autistic individuals, don't assume you know what autistic individuals are looking for. Talk to the autistic individuals that work for you, that are in your community, that are applying for your jobs, and finding out those pieces. But I think that one of the barriers that we see more than I don't want to do that work is I'm afraid of doing it wrong.
I can understand that. I think, I'm not going to lie. When this was proposed as a topic for, I grew up in a period where I used every incorrect word. I used the R slur. I used all kinds of stuff because that was just what we did. I didn't know better. And I have worked very hard to not be that person. And I understand why that's a problem and all of those things. But there's a little part that is scary that you're going to let something slip and suddenly you are the jerk, even though you're trying really hard and you want to do good things. So yes. I think that's really worth, mentioning. Yeah,
I feel like it's important though to always ask, and rather than just use avoidance, to really be open to learning and hearing from the neurodivergent people in your life how they want to be represented and how they want to be interacted with.
Yeah, makes sense.
And it's why we want to talk about it, because the more we talk about it, the less scary it becomes.
Right, yeah.
And I'm with you. I was terrified of coming on this podcast and talking for any reason.
It's very scary.
You're very intimidating. And also talking about this makes me nervous too, even though I've been in it for many years now, because I do say things wrong. And luckily I have people like Grayson and other folks working on this project that kindly correct me when I make mistakes. because it is a process and it is learning, and we're not going to get it all right all at once. But I think the more comfortable we are sharing that we're not getting it all right all at once, having those moments, I think our community loves a good fail fest. We love hearing about how other people tried something and didn't work out quite exactly right, because it gives us a little bit more reassurance that it's okay to make those mistakes and it's okay for things to not work out exactly perfectly, or it's okay to take a step and know that that's not the end of the journey.
Cool. Very good. We are getting towards the end of our time. So before we get to my last two questions, is there anything else that either of you want to say about any of this stuff?
I'm going to think of it 5 minutes after we finish up.
If you do, you can record it on your phone and send it to me. It's fine.
No, I really appreciate you having us on to talk about this. This is really cool work. I'm really excited about it. For the most part, I'm not the one implementing it. All of our awesome zoos and aquariums are out there doing cool stuff, and I think it's great to highlight it and tell people more about it.
Cool. Well, then how can people support any of these? Mosaic, Zane, whatever. How can people support?
To join Zane, go to www.zanezoo.org and sign up for our mailing list and our resources.
Excellent.
Yeah, and if you want to get involved in learning more about the Mosaics project, the Mosaics grant technically is coming to an end this year, but Beyond Access is going to extend for another 4 years. And if you're just curious about inclusion in zoos and aquariums and how you can do more, how you can be involved, or getting your institution involved, people can reach out to me. My email address is khart@aza.org.
Oh.
And I'm happy to field any questions.
And mine is Grayson Ponti @zanezoo.org.
Cool. And I will put those in the show notes as well. And now it is time. It's time now, don't you know? We've come to the end of the show. But there's one tale left to go. You're gonna laugh and say, oh no. It's time for the Rossifari poop story.
Most of my poop stories are I'm a graduate of Miami University's Project Dragonfly, and we went to different places around the world like Namibia and Borneo where we would see lots of different poop, and we would try to figure out like what animals it was, and that's most of my experience.
You know that if you stick with these zoos long enough, eventually you're going to get pooped on by something.
Oh, yes.
But that works. And how about you, Kari?
So I work a lot with humans. But
oh boy, this is going to take a really weird turn.
It's not. I work a lot with kids, so there are poop stories there, but we're not going to go into those because they're just not quite as funny. But my best poop story is probably I was working many years ago as an educator at a zoo, and we had a chicken that had previously been living outdoor in a nice coop, but there was some damage to the coop. And so as a very brief interim solution, the chicken was living in our education office. And chickens poop everywhere. Mm-hmm. Nothing stops them. So it was on chairs. It was everywhere. But the worst part of the day was when we realized that the chicken obviously at some point had gotten up on the laminator and pooped on the laminator. And if you have never smelled hot chicken poop, it doesn't go away very quickly. And it was quite a learning experience for many of us.
That's amazing. Awesome. Well, thank you both for taking the time. I do really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much.
All right, y'all. Well, there you have it. I hope y'all enjoyed that look at some of the changes that are being made and things that are happening right now around accessibility. I think that's really cool. Make sure that you check out Zane. Make sure that you check out these opportunities to, whether it's, find some resources for your own neurodiversity or to help people that you know that are neurodivergent, especially in the zoo field. There's so much great research out there now, and I think it's a great time to remember that. Before I get going, I do want to take a moment to say thank you to all of my patrons. And of course, especially my Red Panda level patrons, which are Dr. Laura Schenk, Dr. Stephen Williamson, Barbara Bennett, Jenny Owens, Melissa Reed, Carrie Kirkpatrick, John Lewis, who is also here for stickers, Kevin Williams, and Cormac McMuffin. Meow. We will be back on Friday with an all-new episode of Zoo News featuring at least one guest, maybe two. I haven't decided how I'm handling something yet. So, yeah, at least one guest. And until then, remember, friends, the word credits backwards is Steiderk. The Rossifari podcast is produced, hosted, and engineered by John Rossi. Editing and fact-checking by John and Dr. Zoe Rossi. Our theme song is Sevens by Nathan Burke, performed by Nathan and John. Interrupting John theme and additional voices by Taylor Isaac Gray. You can reach John directly on Instagram and Facebook at Rossifari or by email at rossifaripod@gmail.com. Rossifari is part of the Daydreamer Media Network. Now, stop listening to me and go visit a zoo.